Just a little bit of a background of myself. I am in this IT business assistant, for a very long time. In my past life, working in a similar role, I constantly run into, development related testing requirement. And along that line, most of the time, me and my team will have to come our own test script. Most of it, and they're all done manually, by the individual. Even though they could be a functional expert who are familiar with the environment, but doing the test cases and the execution is very time consuming. And since last year, after I joined a SaaS Lab, one other thing I discovered in our current Salesforce organization is that I inherit a very highly customized organization. With that being said, there are customization, automation, and the code which was developed, and it has been built up, over the year. So we are suffering from tech debt. And one of the most common issue we run into is when the rep need to generate quote, we're hitting, the Salesforce CPU timeout error. And that's mainly just due to the over-customized environment. So for those of you who are familiar with Salesforce CPQ, is meant to be used for configuring, product or deal, and also, apply a price rule to calculate the pricing. And lastly, if we want to generate a quote document, the end user can go to quote template and generate document for our client and for our prospects, right? As I mentioned earlier, the issue we encounter mainly focus on the usage of CPQ. We have a lot of backend process running, especially in our line of business. We are doing a lot of annual recurring revenue calculation, and that is per product level. So when it gets aggregated to from the opportunity product line to the opportunity level, it requires some type of calculation. Before Salesforce CPQ release summary variable, right? We actually use a third-party tool to produce that kind of end result. And now is actually the time we decided to go back to the fundamental. We want to leverage Salesforce CPQ out-of-box feature. And just based on our current challenge and also the ongoing process improvement, we decided to kick off a CPQ optimization project. And and just earlier this year. So the project itself, Raj, if we move on to the next slide, it will take up to 13 weeks, and in the 11 weeks, as you can see, right? There are a lot of modules we're planning on to do. The key thing I want to highlight it here, right? We're going back to the fundamental. We want to leverage Salesforce out-of-box feature as much as we can. But our current process in terms of how our sales rep use our tool, it will not be changed. So there are a lot of regression tests that will happen, and we want to have a very minimal impact, to our end user. And with that being said, we are swapping out the engine, but we want to keep the user interface work as is, and which will require a lot of testing, in our current process without affecting, the end user. And this project itself is outsourced to our offshore team, and we do have developer coming from this offshore team, also a dedicated, QA resource. And, Raj, next slide, please.
Sure.
And yeah, this resource, as you can see on the slide, she has 8 years of, QA testing experiences, and she is a functional expert who can perform the test. Similar to me and my previous team, right? She has not used an automated tool in the past. So in other words, she cannot, write JavaScript to automate the process. And what she has been doing is the traditional, testing process. And obviously, after SaaS acquire AutonomIQ, we certainly want to adopt our own tool. So, using my project as our testing stone, we involve our offshore team so they can grow with us and utilize the tools for our, mission critical project. And Srada is the person who learned from scratch. It took her probably just a day or two to get familiar with the environment. Immediately, she become very productive. All right. And her feedback was, she loved the tool very much, and she would love to use the tool for other projects that she's been working on. As a matter of fact, we will be working with our offshore team and see if we can expand that collaboration, and see where how we can help each other out. So this is a perfect example, having somebody who is not familiar with automation and picking up the, AutonomIQ in a very short time and become immediately productive. Okay. Now, let's kind of just review the common challenge that people is facing when they are doing some type of testing in Salesforce, right? So the common challenge, as you can see, right, there are, Salesforce, releases, every year. You basically would have three, release every year. A lot of time, right? The Salesforce organization and their customer will get the chance to do a preview, right? For those type of preview scenario, obviously, right, you want to run it through some kind of regression testing, and in terms of some additional new feature they introduce, maybe it's a replacement of the existing functionality. Locale format, for those you who are familiar with the Salesforce latest release, the locale format will get changed, next year, right? For us, we want to get ahead of the game. We want to be able to test it out, right? So we are, using AIQ as our testing tool to do the regression test. Also, we want to enable this new feature in a sandbox and see how it plays out in our environment. That is just an example, right? Obviously, these type of work, we just cannot create a test script every single time from scratch. We want to be able to, use our existing test script and be able to, test these type of, new feature or new release repeatedly. And we want to do it once and use it for the future release, right? So what we highlighted here, right, is not only just going to be focused on Salesforce own product, it also cover some of the customization that we have done internally. And the key thing, I want to point out, right, in addition to resource from our development team, we have also the functional, user from our business team who also will need to, be able to perform the UAT, the user acceptance testing. So the current way for us to collaborate between the dev team and the functional team is that we are sharing our test script. It's very easy and straightforward to export out the test cases into a CSV file, and we basically share that unit testing test script with our functional team, so they can build their UAT test cases on top of our unit testing test cases. So that's kind of collaboration that we're seeing right now, and it's actually very helpful, especially for the functional user who may know more on the functional end how things work in the day-to-day life, but having that additional information coming from the dev team and QA team is a booster for them to be able to build out their test cases much quicker, much quicker, and also get to the point. All right. So I highly recommend those of you who are using Salesforce and really want to kind of graduate from the manual, testing to automated testing. AutonomIQ is something me and my team just picked up, and we are benefiting a lot from these tools.
So Paul laid out some really critical elements for SaaS app testing. Salesforce, other applications are very similar. Like Paul said, Salesforce does 3 releases a year. Oracle does 4 releases a year, right? So you have to be able to deal with these applications. Some of these applications are so critical. Like Paul said, if our salespeople are not able to generate quote, right? Do it in a fast, timely manner. We have a problem, right? We have a business problem. That's a business process issue. So this is what every organization is facing today. That's why they're optimizing the CPQ capabilities. And that means there is change. There is not only Paul and his team have to deal with 2 types of changes. One, created by Salesforce, because they're pushing changes. They do monthly, as well as once in 3 or 4 months, they will do a major release. And then there is a change that Paul and his team are doing to Salesforce application and optimizing that. So that also needs to be tested. So every time there is a change, you have to test and validate so nothing gets disrupted. And Paul also nicely summarized, look, these are 5 major problem areas, right? But when we talk about sales applications like Salesforce, Oracle, it is not just few screens. There is an entire breadth and depth to Salesforce. They have their own Salesforce clouds like Commerce Cloud, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and Marketing Cloud, and so on. And plus, they have a ton of products. They have a ton of technologies. They have Classic, Lightning, and so on. So there is a lot of different technologies and a lot of different clouds and a lot of different breadth of applications is too big. And how do you deal with that? That's one pain point. The second pain point is, like Paul mentioned, highly dynamic application, constantly changing object locators and so on. You need to deal with that. Supports key business processes, because if it doesn't work, salespeople can't generate quotes. And citizen testers, like Paul profiled, the young lady, Shraddha, who is a functional expert, but doesn't know Java Selenium automation. And so these are the changes we're dealing with, right? And these are the pain points. So what I did was I just quickly put together how AutonomIQ can address these, right? One platform to address all Salesforce testing. And we handle dynamic application change challenges because we have something called auto healing. So when the object locators change, we still have an object reference. From there, we can generate the new object locator. So that way, you won't have to maintain those scripts manually. Next, for key business process support, we understand key business process support requires end-to-end testing. Also, Paul mentioned UAT. We support those kinds of things. Today, AutonomIQ is used for end-to-end application testing and UAT and so on. So that's how we ensure business process integrity is maintained. Finally, citizen testers, we talked enough about citizen testers, in terms of even profiling Shraddha as a person who doesn't have test automation skills, but is easily able to generate automation. That's a key going forward, because we see a world where there is a lot of different people with different capabilities coming together, collaborating to make things happen. And this product is targeted at that group of people in a collaborative mode. And finally, Autonomic is integrated with Salesforce CI/CD frameworks like Copado, Jenkins, and so on. So using that, we can continuously we can do an integration to your CI/CD pipe, your Salesforce CI/CD pipeline. So we can not only test your sandbox, your integration, staging, and production. That, in a nutshell, how we address it. Paul, back to you.
Yeah. So, the advantage of using AutonomIQ, right, versus the traditional framework, right? As I mentioned, my team doesn't have everybody who has the testing, test the automation skill sets, and but we are automating the test scenario, right? Using just the functional resource from my offshore team and also our business stakeholder, right? And according to the direct feedback coming from the offshore team, AutonomIQ, based on their comparing with their past experience, is 3 to 4 times faster, than the traditional approach, executing the test cases manually in our environment. And the best part is, you build it once, you're going to be able to use it, for the next run, right? So we don't have to, keep on, doing this without, creating extra work, because the script can be executed, all the time whenever there's a business need comes up. And even adjusting the script is so straightforward. If we switch from one test environment to another test environment, it probably just a login and password change it. It could be just as simple as that. So we really benefit a lot of using AutonomIQ as our testing tool. And the tester loved the tool, and we certainly wanted to use it for all our future projects, and make it more automated.
Thank you, Paul. So with that, we can switch to demo. So let me pull up the demo. Give me 1 second. So while I'm pulling up the demo, one question for Paul. Paul, how much testing is involved when there is a periodic, for every new release that you get from Salesforce? How much effort do you have to put for that type of testing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Raj. As everybody know, Salesforce release have 3 release per year. And for when each release comes out, every release does allows us to do a preview, through a particular window. And what we have done, so far is when the new release come out, we have a sandbox that have the most recent release. And in the past, without using AutonomIQ, what we are doing is just try to check a few key business process and make sure it's not broken. Obviously, the coverage is not going to be too high. And since this is a manual task, so it's time consuming, and due to limited resource, we can only test probably the most critical functional area that we would like to test. But with AutonomIQ, once we have the test script built out, then it will be just a very simple execution, right? We run the script and we just wait until the end result comes out. In some cases, like the new feature that have been introduced to the Salesforce organization, obviously, we may need to add a few more test cases on top of what we already have, but that process is going to be very straightforward. we can also test the same feature repeatedly in a future release. So I do see a lot of benefit, right? Building something from the ground up, and keep on adding new cases to our existing test suite and execute it. And when the time comes, when the preview box sandbox is available to us.
So, how much, in terms of the effort, how many weeks is usually, or how many days or weeks is planned for every Salesforce upgrade cycle?
Yeah, usually, when the sandbox become available, we will take a minimum a week or two to test out the key functionality, and depending on the availability of the resource. So the end goal, of course, we want to do a thorough, test and cover every test scenario that we would like to test, not just the mission critical ones. So utilizing AutonomIQ will certainly help us to achieve that goal. And we just acquired AutonomIQ, at the beginning of this year. That process is getting built up, and we are going to improve the process over time. Hopefully, by the coming releases, we will have enough test script built out, so we can just run it and wait for the end result, come out.
Got it. Makes sense, Paul. So one last question on the releases, Paul. There is a monthly release, or a periodic, what they call technical release from Salesforce. Does that do you accept those releases, and do you have to do any testing for the monthly releases? I'm just curious.
So there are two types of releases. One is basically they push it to our organization, each year 3 times. There are additional one is by user we can enable them as we like. The one that I mentioned earlier, the locale format changes.
Yes.
It has a deadline which is mid next year, right? But that also kind of gave us enough room to align our resource and to be prepared for those type of tests. So the feature is there. It's up to us to turn on and run the test. So we are planning to get those type of self-enable feature tested, obviously before the deadline. So this is type of thing, the user, the Salesforce, customer have the room to make their own, time schedule to test it now. So I think we're good when it comes to individual feature enablement. But I think the key thing is how can we be more prepared for the the 3 release per year, right? And we want to do a thorough tested, and having the test script and test script built out is the key. We're going to accumulate as many test cases as we can and run it before the official release day comes.
Excellent, thank you. You're certainly a Salesforce expert, I can tell. So for everybody who can see my screen, these are the projects. These are, I would say, a short sample of the projects that Paul's team has created. So what I would like to show you is take you through one of the scenarios that they have created. You can see there is a lot of test cases they have created. They're working on those test cases. But I would love to show you this one particular test case it's called close one the opportunity and create a contract. So this is a very interesting test case because here there was a lead became an opportunity, and the opportunity is now you won the opportunity. That means that's a new customer, and now you need to create a contract and send it to them, right? So that is the test that is being done. It's a very critical business process for every enterprise, as you can understand. So what I'm going to do is this is what Paul's team has created. So, and by the way, the earlier demo I did was more on Salesforce Classic, right? So just to recap, this particular test scenario I did on purpose because I knew I was going to do a lightning version later, because lots of customers are still using Classic. And you can see the difference between Classic. This is the Salesforce Classic mode. And what Paul is doing is Paul is ahead of the Classic. There are still a lot of customers in Classic, and some are in hybrid, some Classic, some Lightning. But Lightning is where most of the customers are. The Lightning is where the future is, and that's where they need to go. But Paul's team has already graduated to Lightning. Just to show you a screen difference, you can see here. Let us go here. You can see this is a different type of screen compared to the other screen. So that is basically it's a UI difference between Classic and Lightning. So let us take a look at what Paul's team has done, right? So you log into the website, and here is this is the test tab, as you can see here, and this is the screenshot. So we are giving you evidence of execution on every step. So we're going to run login. So this is a repeating process. Everybody needs to log in. So we just made it a simple flow or a component or a function, you can call it. And then that function just executes here, right? So enter username, we entered the username, and then entered the password, and then clicked on login. And here we say click on login to Sandbox, and as I'm showing you the step, you can also see the highlight, right? The particular, like here, enter the password, then that particular box is highlighted, because that's how you know where Autonomic is making the change, right? And then once we do this, then we go on clicking on accounts and clicking on a particular test account and clicking on opportunities. You see here, I'm clicking on opportunities, that box is highlighted. And then finally, click on second test account. So we need to go, you see here, this test account 24/5 renewal. It clicked on that account. You can see that that's highlighted. And then now we're going to double click on qualification, because so there is a difference between click and double click, right? So here we are double clicking on qualification. See, this is that, and for it, this is, and then you're now selecting the stage closed one, right? The stage is very important, because this is telling you whether it is just an early lead or it is now you won the deal, so it's a closed one. So that's what that is saying. And then so our application is smart enough to know that the focus is now not on the main page, but on the dependent fields page. See, you didn't have to mention any of that. We immediately know closed one is here, and we will do that. So also the probability is 100%, because usually the probability can be 30%, 40% as the lead progresses in the pipeline. But here it is 100% because we won the deal. So when you win the deal and then you click OK, and then you save this entire record, and you go through and you, okay, even something like refresh web page, because you want to load all these things and see the latest updated information, because you just change the status. So you can hit a refresh, you can write a refresh page statement, and it will automatically refresh it. And then we finally click on detail. You see, we go to renewed contract, and then we enter this information. We click on that in that particular record inside renewed contract, and that is the last step. So that's how you renew the contract, right? So you essentially, we just showed you the steps where you navigate through the application, and you select a particular account. You click on the opportunities. You click on the qualification of that particular opportunity, and then you change the status, and then you send that contract information out. So that is how this closed one opportunity and create a contract works. In this, I showed you a lot of complex things where you have to go in and do it on a pop-up page, activities on a pop-up page, and you can refresh the web page, and you need to verify things, click on in nested things, and so on. So this is how Paul's team has put together a test scenario, and somebody who doesn't have a lot of test skills is able to do something like this, all in simple English, and get this thing done. So that is an example of how AutonomIQ can work with different technologies within Salesforce. Whether it is Classic or Lightning, it can get the job done. So with that, we can turn it over to Susie for any questions.
Let's kick off with this one, asking about API level setup. The question is, does the tool handle any API level setup that is required for a test setup?
Yes. So API level setup, what we have seen used is doing a SSO, which is single sign-on, with Salesforce credentials. Yes, some of our customers do that, right?
Great, thank you. Simple answer.
Yes.
Another question coming in, how do you handle random pop-ups like feedback that don't have a specific pattern about when they appear?
So there is a couple of ways. That is a more detailed question. We can, if there is an unexpected event, there is a way we can handle that. Sometimes the pop-ups are benign, and sometimes they are not. So, but different. Sometimes you can it asks you to allow it or deny it. So those kinds of pop-ups are benign. They're not going to stop you from doing what you need to do. But there are some pop-ups that you have to act on before you can move forward. So we have different techniques to handle both of those things, and then that requires a more detailed conversation.
Question that came into the chat earlier, and we might have covered this at an earlier point in the event. Someone's asking how they can randomize the username and password data for each test run. Certainly an issue if you want to make sure data is kept secure, private.
Right. So one thing I have to be careful. You may not be able to randomize a user ID password only because it won't be valid and it won't work. So, however, if I understood the intent correctly, you can actually use a well-defined set of user ID passwords. So let's say, for example, you have a work group, you have an employee, you have a manager, you have a regional vice president, and so on. So our application can actually log in as an employee, submit something, and then as a manager, and as a group manager, and as a regional vice president, we can log in as different personas, and we can do that. But if you just want to test the login page with a random user ID password, we can also do that. That's very easy to do. And actually, let me show you how to, do that. And give me a second. Here, we call that synthetic data. So there is a way you can generate synthetic data. In this case, the tester did not want to reveal the last name. They wanted to protect for data protection, data privacy. They wanted to reveal the last name. And they just gave us an expression. From that expression, we automatically generate a last name. So this is the facility that's available. But when it comes to user ID password, we have to be a little careful.
Thank you, Raj. And I'm going to keep running with these. Paul, if there's anything that you want to add from your specific experience with the Sauce Labs Salesforce instance, please do jump in. Asking here, is it possible to extend AutonomIQ from the end user side? The example being if their intent is to go through each link in a sitemap and verify that a particular element exists on each page, how would they go about achieving that?
We call that the golden test. One of our customers, a very well-known delivery company, that's what they do. So essentially, they have the same web application in many languages and many regions. So for them, the golden test is all the tabs work, all the tabs at the top level and the second level work, and some of the key buttons work. That is the sanity test that they run every day often. So we can do something like that. You just variabilize, you create a variable for all of those tabs and labels, and you just run through and make sure you verify an existence of something. Like in this case, I'll show you an simple example of that. So here I'm verifying ABCs on the screen. That's all you have to say. Verify contact detail is on the screen, and it found contact detail. You can say verify home is on the screen, accounts, opportunities, orders, products. You get the idea. So you can select any of the items you want and validate that is on the screen, and it will find it. And if it doesn't find it, it will stop there. We can make it a red try. It will become a failure, and it will fail there, and then you can act on it.
Right. And somewhat related to what you were just saying, Raj, you were phrasing how we can direct the test, verify that this element exists, et cetera. We have someone asking how important the specific wording is. These are English language test scripts that we're writing. How important is it that we use specific words in stating the test intent, right? Does it need to specifically say, click the button or verify that element exists? Or is there some flexibility in the words that are used and understood?
So there is a lot of flexibility in the sense, I'll show you a simple example. So here, you see here, enter company. We know humans make mistakes. That's why we have AI to clean it up, right? So here we have companies misspelled, and our platform already knows that. So what it says is, it is saying field use was company and fuzzy score was 86.0. So it rates the human writing and says, well, you know what, it was not 100%, but it's close enough because it really found the right label on the screen and entered the information there, right? So there are two types of things in the question. If I understood the intent correctly, there are two types of things. One, human errors happens all the time. That's okay. We have a way to accommodate that. But then also the question could be, hey, do I have to use enter? Or do I have to use click? Is there any kind of keyword you're using? No, the answer is no. Anything you can use in a simple English that is reasonable, like open the web, instead of saying open the website here where I'm pointing, you can say go to website, click on website, anything that is reasonable approximate, a synonym, right? It is we are looking for a synonym that our domain specific natural language processing engine can understand, right? If you just put totally unrelated thing here, then we wouldn't be able to understand that, and we will stop there and ask you for that, right? So that's how it is. So it doesn't have to be these specific keywords. These are not keywords. These are just suggested words that you can use in English. But instead of open the website, you can say go to website, click on website. Any of those things will work.
And a question I think I'll send to both of you, Raj and Paul. Someone's asking about support for test documentation. So on Raj's side, just wanting to get some more insight on, does Autonomic only offer the dashboards that you showed, or are there also reports like test planning, test reports? They mentioned in-process status reports. And then Paul, to your side, just wondering of those reports, dashboards that are available, how your team uses and leverages those.
Yeah, so we basically just start using AutonomIQ. As I mentioned earlier, it gave us it opened up a brand new door to us. And currently we're just using the probably the bare minimum, leveraging it for test cases, and it's only target for this particular project. So we haven't really graduated from that level yet. Obviously, the tool itself provide a lot more feature that we can take advantage of. So what has been used is mainly exporting the test cases to a CSV file, and so in our weekly review meeting in each spring, we actually review those test cases through that CSV export, so which will help us can perform this type of test case review very quickly without physically getting into the tool itself and review that there. So this is more like our current use cases. I would definitely defer to Raj, and Raj can probably elaborate more.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. You answered the question basically. What Paul is saying is, look, it all starts with test case, right? Test case is the most important document that says what is the intent of the test. Why are you testing this? Right? That is the key question. Why are you putting the effort to test something? And that is the piece of the documentation all the way to report, right? This is the report. This is the outcome. This is the execution report that matches the test case. The test case was, whatever we needed to do here, which is create a lead, a new lead, convert the lead, and so on. So, but this was the intent that Paul reviewed in a sprint meeting. And then the report actually shows you exactly what happened. Because if there is a failure anywhere, because if something could not work or something happened, then we have a problem. That's a defect that we need to fix. So we cover everything from test case. This is the test report, the execution report, but the test case is here, right? When you look at the test case is, this is the test case. So we have a documentation of the test case. We have and we generate the scripts, and we document the code, and the code is here. Where this is the script. This is the Java Selenium script that you can see that matches the intent you just gave us, the test case. And then we have the reports. And then we also have dashboards. There are two types of dashboards. The one kind of dashboard that is a high-level dashboard for a CXO person that can look at overall projects and see, hey, why is this 62%? What is going on here? And also project-level dashboards that they can take a look at. And this is the project level dashboard, which is, okay, this release is doing good. This requires some work, and so on, right? So we have multiple levels. We have documentation. One last thing I have not shown, I didn't have a time to show, is a video. We automatically generate a video of every execution, and that video can also be used for, like SOX compliance, training purposes, and so on. So that is another piece of documentation we generate. So those are the multiple pieces of documentation. The most important thing for most organizations is they would like us to integrate with Jira and Git. And that is the single source of truth for them for documentation, and we support that. We have natively integrated into Jira, into Jenkins, into all the most popular tools, where they actually, in Jira is the best example, where they store all their test cases and test results, and we can easily export to those things, that particular application.